Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Come on in. Buzz Hayes is with us this morning. Good morning, Buzz.
Good morning, Jim. Hey, how are you, everybody?
Really
Thanks
good.
for being here.
The DGA yesterday, the Teamsters, SAG, the Alliance of Motion Picture TV Producers, and all the groups got together yesterday and announced that they'd reached an agreement on working safely. So as everyone comes in, we'll start at 11 o'clock. But I wanted to just hit on a couple of things. The group has agreed on how to conduct work to prevent the spread of COVID, protective gear for cast and crew, a zone system to protect employees, and each worker will get 10 paid days of sick leave for COVID-19. So the infrastructure with the studios and all the unions and guilds looks like it's ready to go and people can get work started again. The protocols, quote, pave the way for creative workers who've been hard hit by COVID to resume their crafts and livelihoods in workplaces redesigned around their health. So that's really, really good news. Rami Katrib of Digital Film Tree will be doing a session for us in 2 weeks about how a safety zone works and how the process works to protect all the people on a set. So we're kind of excited about that. Buzz, have you seen Ratchet on Netflix?
I have not yet. It's high on my list. We were just talking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as a family. My kids are old enough to see it now. So we're going to start with that and then work our way up to Ratchet.
Okay, I watched it last night. And it's Sarah Paulson, Sharon Stone, Cynthia Nixon, new series by Ryan Murphy taking place in a mental hospital in California. So pretty crazy show. Fabulous. I liked it a lot. I thought it was really, really great. He does a great job. We've got folks coming in this morning. Good morning, third floor. Welcome. We're glad you guys are chiming in. We've got people coming in from all over, so that's great. Hey, if we had a theme for today, Buzz, it's heavy hitters. We got a lot of heavy hitters on today's show. So we don't want to keep them waiting. But last week, we got such fabulous feedback from our session with Matt Workman, who came to us live from Boston. And he kind of blew everybody away by showing his virtual stage from home. So why don't we take a look at just 30 seconds from last week's session with Matt. Let's have a look.
Is a Vive controller that's being tracked by the sensors around me. And this allows me to control the camera by going handheld. So this is one of the other ways that a lot of filmmakers like to work. And I'm just going to move around the virtual dolly, so to speak, to get a view of this that looks good. Something like this. And again, remember, we're recording the whole time. This is not an expensive rendering time process. I can just roll the whole thing and just have a lot of footage. Or you can cut in between either way. So I'm zooming in here, changing the focal length.
Buzz, we got emails from Brazil to Amsterdam to New York and Miami and Vancouver and Toronto about that session. So we're thrilled. He's an amazing creative, and stay tuned to this channel because we'll have more. Stay tuned, everybody. Remote control starts shortly. Good morning from Radiant Images in Glendale, California. This is Remote Control. I'm Jim Chabin from the Advanced Imaging Society. And COVID-19 has made it impossible for us to gather together here in Hollywood. So with the help of our friends at Dell, NVIDIA, Computer Graphics World, and this great new platform from Meetmo, we're taking these conversations online. And we've been blown away by the response with folks watching from here in LA, but also the Bay Area, Seattle, Vancouver, Toronto, New York, Miami, Houston, Brazil, Puerto Rico, Europe, and Bollywood. AIS brings creative people together with tech people to help each other succeed. Last week, we got an amazing view from creator Matt Workman in Boston and leaders from the Producers Guild. This week, we hear from the team leaders at ILM Labs, Zoic Studios, Bebop Technology, Packet Fabric, and Amazon Web Services. And then we'll go live to Washington, D.C. to see how Discovery Communications migrated their global family of TV channels to the cloud in the last year. We'll also hear from Buzz Hayes presenting Rethinking Collaboration, the Google Perspective. We also want to get your take on what's happening in our industry right now. So our first poll question today is, how long do you anticipate working from home? How long do you anticipate working from home? Do you think you'll be working from home, A, through May of 2021, B, through September 2021, C, through December 2021, or D, do you think we're all doing this through June of 2022? Let us know your answers, and we will give you the results here later in the program. Our mission for the balance of this year is to keep you connected to others in our field and promote your success. So stay tuned to this channel, and we'll keep you tuned in. Today's program is 90 minutes. So thanks to Gary Radburn and Matt Allard at Dell, Michael Mansouri of Meetmo, Rick Champagne at NVIDIA, and let's get started. Hollywood's migration to the cloud is particularly relevant and accelerating during this time of COVID. Today, we're getting several views from both the creative side and the tech empowering the creative process. This session is 30 minutes, and you can send any of our guests questions in the chat window on the side of your screen. Here to lead the conversation is an entertainment industry colleague who has served in roles at Sony Pictures Entertainment and CAA. He just recently joined Amazon Web Services, where he is CTO for the global M&E vertical. We want to congratulate Eric Iverson on his new role at Amazon. Now let's join Eric and his panel. Eric.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. And, I don't know about you, but I kind of want to add betting to that poll. When I look across some of our people that we're going to get a chance to talk to today, they've made some of my favorite shows of all time. So I couldn't be more excited to kind of lead this panel. So we have Saker Clifton from CTO at Zoic Studios. Say hi, Saker. We have Dave Benson, a longtime friend of mine, innovator in media and entertainment. Dave, say hi to everyone. Vicky Dobbs-Beck, maybe with one of the coolest titles, executive in charge at ILM X Labs, and we're gonna have to talk about that. See, everyone's nodding, right? You should be happy about that title. And then Dave Ward, CEO at Packet Fabric, who you might think that Dave sounds like, hey, Packet Fabric, is that kind of a media entertainment company? But look, you look at his background from Cisco and some of the work he's been doing in media entertainment for a long time. I think you're going to see exactly why he's so critical to this conversation. And I think that brings us to kind of this topic for the today, which is we've been working so hard, I think, over this last year, like staying connected. And everyone on this panel is really just pretty incredible storytellers, creatives, and technologists in kind of this world of keeping us connected, creating new ways of us being connected. And that really kind of starts all the way back to before this crazy year that we started in. So for our panel, I'm going to kind of tee it up this way. There are so many great shows out there that you can watch. And last year was just a banner year for that. There was $120 billion that went into brand new content last year. And to put that in perspective, you might think that's a big number, but that's a third of the gross domestic product for Israel. That is a huge number. And we had a record amount of television productions last year. And if you looked at what you saw in kind of other kind of experiences in gaming, rises across the board, this amazing thirst for just incredible content. So I'm going to open this up as kind of a panel discussion to the group. Going in through this incredible year, 2019, 1 year ago, last year, what were you guys thinking about? Like, we all are doing this kind of really interesting, imaginative, innovative work in your spaces. And what were you thinking about? And I'm going to start this off with Vicky. Vicky, what were you thinking about a year ago? What kind of experiences were you thinking we were going to be creating?
A year ago, we were actually releasing episode 2 of our VR story series, Vader Immortal. That was sort of the culmination of what was a 4-year journey, kind of the beginning of all kinds of possibilities.
A year ago, yeah, we, 2020 was shaping up to be a really big year for us, jam-packed, expansion all around. Again, we were just kind of tapping into Unreal Engine and using that for some shows on a very, very small scale. But I don't think anybody saw this coming. This definitely changed everything forever.
So a year ago, you're already starting to think, how do I look at game engines and bringing some more of that kind of virtual background into kind of some of the production work? Already kind of thinking that. Dave, Ward, what were you kind of thinking about a year ago?
Look, a year ago, and the role I was in the industry, I was really talking about the need to bring creatives to the cloud, and the ability to use all of this cloud-based technology and the power of the distributed creative workforce around the globe to its greater potential. Well, here I am a year later. Not only did I change companies to one that's delivering network as a service, which is the last part of the cloud to be put into a consumption model, pay for what you use. But what I'm focusing on really is through the entire shift of entire employee workforce now being remote, the fast forward button has been hit on taking all of creative, whether it's capture all the way through post-production and distribution into the cloud. And that's required a ton of bandwidth. So I've stopped talking about it, and I've stopped telling about it, and I started showing it. And that's what I'm up to now, really just hit the accelerator button on getting everything into the cloud.
I love that. I love that. And Dave, you've been Mr. Benson. You've been living in the cloud for a very, very long time. I think it's the place you like to live most. 1 year ago, what did you think 2020? You were planning for 2020. What were you thinking about 1 year ago?
So first of all, kudos to Mr. Ward on his T-shirt. Very well done. A year ago, wow. So a year ago, we were very much kind of in a mode of organic growth and helping the industry, get moving on this kind of slow and steady migration towards what I wouldn't say work from home at that point, but was just remote work models. And so, about a year ago, I think it's consistent with everybody else's answers here. We were all kind of on this slower than I would like it to be, based on my vantage point, but steady kind of move towards this trend. And then, as we'll get to, that all changed.
All right, we're going to take this perfect collection of folks. We have an actual storyteller. We have people working on effects, creating experiences in storytelling. We have the one keeping us connected, and we have one's actually working on workflow all in and around the cloud. All right, so we're going to fast forward now to around mid-March 2020. The world's changed all of a sudden very quickly, and you're all working in this area of kind of connectivity, cloud experiences. What was going through your heads at this point in time? And why don't we start off, Dave, with you, since we were kind of talking about how you were kind of leapfrogging ahead. But what went through your mind right from the beginning?
Ward or Benson?
Ward, sorry, Mr. Ward. I won't read you, Mr. Benson.
So, we're going to do that a couple times.
Ward. We have a density of Daves on this panel.
Yeah, no, I love it. You can't have too many Daves. Dr. Seuss taught me that. All right.
So, needless to say, I think for all of us, it was a holy shit moment, which is all of a sudden nobody can go on campus. And because all of everybody's businesses' lives were instantaneously, you will work from home and need to get your job done from home, or you'll need to get it done from wherever it is that you're working from. And we need to collaborate. And the other Dave can pick up on some of those collaboration technologies. All of a sudden, there was an instantaneous need for massive amounts of cloud capacity, getting the tools necessary available in those clouds that fit the stages of the production pipeline. And it all needs to be up and running instantaneously. So not only was it for all of us, that moment where we suddenly really had the moment where we need to realize what are our lives going to be like, we also had that moment of what are our work lives going to be like. And what we were bringing to the table was the ability to have instantaneous connectivity to the cloud in a secure private internet. The security piece, the traffic engineering piece, bounded latency piece or latency paths, bounded jitter, and direct connectivity into application creative clouds and public clouds to be able to get the job done. So we were one of those companies where all of a sudden the phones were ringing off the hook because legacy telco couldn't get it done. And really what we found was the creatives in the world needed a turnkey solution. As much as I wanted to geek out with them and talk to them all about how it's constructed in the architecture and the technology, I literally got pushback saying, we trust you that the technology is going to work, make it happen instantaneously. And so all of a sudden it was all hands on deck to really provide the connectivity, the bandwidth, and all the services necessary to keep creatives productive. And for us across the entire industry as we work with multiple industries.
I love that. Mr. Benson, I'm guessing you had an oh boy moment as well, mid-March.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, and I can certainly echo what Mr. Ward was saying, and Eric, you and I have been through more than a few of these types of scenarios together in the past. So it was absolutely, you know, our as much as I said, our focus last year at this time was very much organic growth and our 2-year growth path. It went from the 2-year growth path to the 2-week growth path. And I would say even in the very, very beginning of that, it was the 1-week growth path. You know, it was what happened on a Monday, and then we get to Friday, barely crawling across the finish line, you know, and just look back on the week just in disbelief of what just happened. And I can certainly echo again what Dave said. We spend a lot of time, as you would imagine, with all of our customers in varying degrees, talking about things, explaining things, breaking things down so that people understand things. The reality at the end of the day with this situation was people didn't care. They just needed to make it work, get it running, and get their work done. And so I'm proud to say that we were well positioned and able to deliver on all those needs.
I love that. And Saker, you had a pipeline of work coming in,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, oh boy, what did this mean for you? What was the first thoughts that went through your head? What did you think you were going to need to do?
It was pretty interesting. You know, we've spent the last 18 years of existence building a mousetrap to protect us from the outside, dealing with studio security requirements. We have this giant moat around us. We made some bets, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, to move to PC over IP Teradici workflows. So we had half the equation already. So basically we had our workstations in our own data centers and artists in our offices with Teradici portals and monitors and all that stuff that now is common terminology for most people now. And basically, New York was first to go. It was kind of like watching like a zombie apocalypse movie where New York shutting down, oh shit, what do we got to do? And basically I just said, everybody grab your monitors, tablets, and portals and just go home and take it, because we don't know if we can get back into the office. I'll figure out how to undo the mousetrap after the fact. So everybody got home, and then it was updating some firmware and then trying to figure out how to poke holes through our, our wall to get them connectivity into Zoic over the internet, right? And that just brings up all sorts of challenges with local ISPs and Comcast and Time Warner and all those guys that have mulched into these mega ISPs. So that was our biggest challenge. But if I can take 5 seconds to congratulate everybody, it was really it was an amazing feat to see that happen between New York, LA, Vancouver. Everybody just kind of come together as a team and barcode everything to make sure we could keep track of everything. We didn't know if this was going to be a 1-month thing or honestly a year thing, and it's looking like it's going to be a year plus thing. And permanently, I think that's how things are going to be. We're already thinking about that.
I love it, and I love that you brought up the zombie apocalypse with the King Kong over your shoulder there. So I think you gave everyone a pretty good. I think we got that visual. So real quick before we get to Vicky, I'm going to ask her a big question. So in that time, were you feeling, hey, I think we could do this? Like, but I think we could do this. And
we could do. We knew right away we could do it. It was more about the unknown factor, right? Is the connectivity, the last mile, right? And and everybody felt it within the first, month or so that your local ISP did not have connectivity required, like the big trunk connectivity into these major ISPs that we use at our facility, CenturyLink, Level 3, Zayo, all these guys. Spectrum does not have those big pipes that you needed. And so we had to become our own kind of ISP aggregator and bring in Spectrum into our network, bring in Frontier into our network, bring in AT&T directly into our network, so we could peer directly with these ISPs and cut out the middleman, so we could get the lowest latency. But right now we have 200 plus people working remotely, and I can share lots of surveys that we've taken. People are very excited to stay home, come in once or twice a week if things open up, but we can get to that later.
I love that. So I'm going to say that Dave, I saw the Daves nodding their heads, so I'm going to take that as a resounding yes. And I think we got this. So, all right. So Vicky, executive in charge, this is where the rubber hits the road. So you're the one that really has to kind of help figure this out. What were you thinking, and did you feel like we got it? And what were you thinking that we needed to do?
Well, I think we learned very quickly that we had some unique challenges that we faced. Our team actually had to have their workstations and their headsets, because we were working in VR, at home. So unlike what Sekar was talking about, which certainly ILM was able to take advantage of, where you were remoting into machines, et cetera, that were on site, we actually had to get the physical setups to all of our team. And I think it was extraordinary, because as Sekar said, it was an incredible team effort, with support throughout the company in terms of doing this efficiently, in a healthy way, in a safe way, and get everybody up and running, and then collaborating remotely. So I felt like that time, March, April, et cetera, was like this adrenaline rush where we did it. We got everybody working effectively, but we were working, we were in the early stages at the time, actually, of our latest production, which is Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. It was already on an ambitious schedule, and, unlike a lot of the film and television projects that some went on hold, some got canceled, et cetera, ours was still moving on the same timeline. So it was a little daunting. And I would say one of the things that we did early on, especially during that sort of adrenaline rush period, was trying to figure out how do you keep the sense of team spirit, because that's so essential to the success of our creation efforts. And so we did things, early on, like VR happy hours, where everybody'd show up in their VR headsets. We did a VR chat happy hour where everybody met in a virtual chat room. Which actually was surprisingly satisfying, since we were not able to, really be with people in a physical sense. So it was a really interesting and kind of inspiring time. I would say that sort of March, April, May period.
I love that. And by the way, I'm going to say what everyone was thinking. That was an amazing catch, by the way. I know everybody was watching. They were thinking, it was like, oh my gosh, absolutely hands up. That made it worth watching this show just for that.
Well done. We rehearsed that.
So Vicky, I'm going to let you have a shot at this. We're going to do a power round with our panelists. All right. So I want you to think of your two top things that you thought were working really well, and that just the two top things that you thought were kind of lessons that you'd learned by the time we got to about July. So this is in the grand scheme of things, this is where we've gotten some guidance as far as how production might safely work. And I know we got some really good news on that today, but that was kind of our first round on it. So Vicky, how was it by the time we got to July? What were the two things you thought were really working well, and the two things that you were kind of big ahas and lessons?
Well, I think the working well was we kind of figured out how to still maintain that sense of team without being able to have people physically just, walk from one desk to another. And actually, we had to onboard people during that time frame as well, because we had, new hires and positions that we needed to fill. So that was actually interesting, because we have a number of people on our team now who have never actually been into our facility at Lucas. And I think the learnings, though, are that we realized in July, that this was a marathon, not a sprint. And so we had to figure out how to sustain the energy level and sustain the excitement, and not just kind of drift into a world where there were no boundaries. I think that was a really important thing, is that we, whereas people will, even if they work late, they encourage people to go back home, at the end of the day, et cetera. But we really needed to help people set boundaries when they're in the same place, from 24 hours a day. And I think looking ahead, I think one of the things we're realizing is there is perhaps more production support required to manage a remote workforce, so that you can ensure that there is ongoing communication that used to happen in a much more informal way. We had to kind of figure out how to increase that sense of communication and that kind of constant interaction.
I love that, from the executive in charge. Okay, so guys, what are some of the things that you were thinking about doing, kind of what you thought was going well, but to be able to help the Vickies of the world? What do you think was going well, and what did you learn in that period of time? Maybe I'll start off with Benson.
So I guess the way that I respond to that, coming from more the service provider standpoint, and really just observing what I've had the pleasure of observing over the last 6 months or so, is in terms of things that work, what I've seen almost every single time without exception is approaching problems with fresh eyes. We live in a very different world at this point, and all of the problems and all the solutions that we used to use, in a lot of cases, sometimes are not even viable or relevant at this point. And so I would encourage everybody to really, as I said, view the challenges and view the problems that you're trying to solve with fresh eyes, and try and leave what we've all done in the past, at least to the side to start. It doesn't mean that they're not valuable, and it doesn't mean that they don't have a part in the solution. But what I have observed over the last 6 months is that when you take what I did before and just try and do it somewhere else, a lot of times there's a lot to be desired there. And in terms of just call it advice for what it's worth, I've seen without exception at every one of our customers, whether it's the one person that we worked with for a long time, the new group that's come in that has a really huge responsibility to deliver on, find your hero moment. I've seen this happen almost across the board. Find your hero moment and lean into it, because now is the time.
I love the hero moment. So Saker, did you have any hero moments? And I know you mentioned some of these things that you were doing, and that things that you thought were working.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I think, again, going back to security, because it's a huge topic. It could be a whole nother show. It's been really interesting. The studios were all late to getting out, their list of requirements. I hate to use the word screw you, but basically it was just like, move over. We have to run our business. We're going to do what we have to do to get things done. And it's been amazing, the innovation that's happened remotely, adopting new cloud services. We completely migrated over to Office 365 and Microsoft Teams, which has been a huge thing for us. I know a lot of people are on Google and stuff like that, and it's funny, I hear myself saying this, and people are like, well, we've been using that forever. And I'm like, well, no, in our industry, we have such huge security guidelines, nothing can leave, the boundaries of our facility. So for us, that was a huge thing. We did a poll the other day, and one of the questions was, how does everybody like Microsoft Teams? And they were like, we love it. Is it going to be taken away if we ever get back into the office? And we're like, no, we're going to keep this. This is the new way kind of working going forward. So for us, that was a huge thing. Some of the lessons that we've learned that I feel like we would probably take for granted at the office is just people's mental health and well-being. Especially like even my team, we have a pretty, between the pipeline departments and IT, just checking in with everybody, making sure everybody's okay. There's two types of people that I've noticed, there's the introverts and the extroverts. And it's the introverts are thriving right now. They're like, this is amazing, and I don't have to interact with anybody except virtually, and I can just focus and get things done. I don't have the extrovert who has to come by my desk and, prop up and be like, hey, so how's it going? That sort of thing. And those are the folks that we really are paying more attention to, ensuring that, they're doing all right. They're stuck at home, that sort of thing. So I feel like as a company, we've really come together between the offices. I think, Vicky can tell you that it's hard when you run multiple facilities, making everybody feel as one, LA, New York, Vancouver. And we've been working on these projects that have just cross-pollinated because of this technology, right? It's now able to allow us to communicate with each other more easily.
I love that.
It's really brought us together as a family.
I love that. And I love that you brought up that kind of inclusion topic. It's been really interesting, that kind of diversity of thought, where people that kind of tend to be a little more introverted in their thinking, but think deeply about problems. I've actually seen that too, where we're actually getting, in some ways, better thinking in our organizations by using some of these tools, by this situation that we created. I thought that was a great point that you brought up. So, Mr. Ward, you brought up all these examples from earlier. What do you feel like was some of our kind of big lessons learned by midsummer?
Well, the Packet Fabric was 100% remote before the pandemic started. So we thought our culture was really not going to need to be looked at all, because nobody was working together. We have no two employees that go to the same physical location for work pre-pandemic or obviously afterwards. So that meant we needed to suddenly find new modalities for us to be able to communicate. And just like in normal human society, in virtual workplaces, there are groups that work together, niche cultures come together, and I'm kind of taking what Sekar said and taking a different spin on it. Our employees needed to be able to express themselves in the way that they needed to, wanted to, and could. And so we suddenly we thought what was working really well, and we suddenly needed to rapidly expand that with the tooling we have. And Sekar gave some examples, and I can give others. But really, that cultural expression became critical inside the company. We're rapidly growing, so we're onboarding folks as well. And onboarding folks into a virtualized culture, into a virtualized workplace and company is a really, really interesting task, to make sure that you can maintain the culture of the company, the spirit of the group, and then also hit the gas pedal. And so what we found by July, and what I was alluding to earlier, was that everyone's need to suddenly have massive amounts of bandwidth, and we're a programmatic platform on top of our network, meant that we needed to push out new APIs and new ways to program, configure, provision, as well as pull data out. When folks have their critical businesses built on top of the internet and on top of a secure private internet, they need all the data, they need all the guarantees of security, they want to see the numbers and telemetry that comes out of that. And all of a sudden, we found another level of volume to turn it up to. We went from 10 right to 12, right through 11, and really had to step on the gas and make stuff happen very, very quickly in response to the demands that our customers were giving us. Trying to keep the entire team together and grow at the same time. And so some of the positive things that came out of this really is that the team did pull together extremely well. And to expand a little bit what Sekar and others said, the thing we had to focus on was actually a work-life balance. We found not only is the productivity increased with everybody having more time to focus on their work, but at the same time, on the mental health aspects and cultural aspects, we needed to make sure folks were still taking breaks and still rearranging their neurons and clearing their head and making sure it was all good. And we've actively focused on making sure that we're not falling into the trap of you need to be able to communicate with everybody 24 hours a day, which is really easy to do when you're kind of locked in your house. That being said, we think we've come out the other side and have a good structure to put around that, and are able to, continue the productivity inside the company, continue to expand our platform, and continue to deliver services that are still under huge demand to get to cloud and to get to these application clouds that others have mentioned.
All right, I'm going to start with you. That's such a great answer. I love that. I'll bet our listeners have got a whole bunch of thoughts out of that. I can see Sekar nodding his head. Yes. So here we go, power round, because we need to leave a little time for a few questions. So my question to you is, if you can only have one thing that you said is going to be the one thing that's going to last forever, and one thing you said that we really need to lean into because we need to do more of it. Of everything you just said, what do you pick, Mr. Ward?
Focus on culture, keep the company going, keep everything productive, make everything go faster. My one just turned into 3.
That's okay. That's okay. We like to cheat a little bit here. It's all good. We all work in media entertainment. All right, Saker, what do you think? Your one thing that's going to last forever, and your one thing that we need to do more of.
You can never have enough communication. That's one thing I've definitely learned. But I think getting used to the fact that you will be working remotely. This is the future in our industry. I know many other people work remotely and they're like, yeah, it's no big deal. But for us, as artists and creatives who kind of crave being around other like-minded folks like that, it's a big deal that I have to speak to somebody through a 2D image on a daily basis. And I can't just collaborate and be next to them and bring there's this this kind of like flow that happens between minds when you're working on a problem next to each other, and you don't get that. So going forward, we're trying to rethink how we can overcome that, how we can make that still happen. So
all right, which kind of ties in a little bit to Mr. Ward's comments there on culture, right? So it's going to happen. Better make sure that we're kind of being thoughtful about it. Mr. Benson, what are your thoughts on this?
In terms of things that are going to last, I think the notion of geography and location are really almost irrelevant at this point. And what we're seeing, as we've all spoken about, is the rate of innovation. The rate of innovation generally is very high. The rate of innovation in the last 6 months is unprecedented. And so I think whereas in the past, a lot of the tools, Saker's kind of narrative about Microsoft Teams, I was sitting here laughing as I was listening to you, because those tools, whereas before 6 months ago, I think were really almost annoyances and things we had to deal with. And I don't want to talk about that. Now they literally are the thing that you live and die by. And I think that what it really is that's going to last is all of us culturally, to everybody's point, starting to fit those things into our culture rather than them just being these nitpicky things on the side of our culture that annoy us. And I think that once everybody wraps their heads around that, we start to see things like Microsoft Teams being integrated into the NBA experience so intimately that you start to not notice it anymore. And so that's really the goal, if I were to say from our perspective at Bebop, is to try and make everything we do, everything we deliver to the consumers of our technologies that sit on top of lots of other ones, as easy and as seamless to consume as possible, and to replicate the creative environment and the creative experience that your creatives need, right? And doing that in as seamless a way as possible.
I love that. All right, executive in charge, bring us home, and
Wrap us
hopefully
up.
And I know that we have like an awesome clip to lead us out. Hopefully we have enough time for it. I'll let the program producers decide that. But Vicki, real quick, what's going to last?
Yeah, I really hope that we use this as an opportunity to try to expand the diversity of our talent base. In the industry that I work in, it's really challenging. It tends to be primarily white male. And I really believe that there's an opportunity in all of this virtual workforce to widen the net, broaden the net, and really get more women and more people of color involved in the creative and the technical process of what we're doing.
We all say amen to that. I think that I think everyone's, there we go. Let's raise the roof on that.
for sure.
So I don't know if we have a chance to, I brought a little clip of what we've been working on. So this is the project we've been working on throughout all of COVID. This was teased at what is, now a virtual event, Facebook Connect last week. And it is for our new project that'll be released at holiday called Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. And interestingly, we actually are expanding the world of Galaxy's Edge, Black Spire Outpost, and the planet Batuu at a time when Disneyland's closed. So it had an odd, ironic twist to it, but it's a really exciting, I think, opportunity and a way to build worlds.
I love it.
Someone, Anyone, please help! My counterpart R2-D2 and I were on board a parts supply vessel bound for Batuu, but it was attacked. You needn't worry. I am a highly trained resistance spy. Dear! You'll do what? Don't be silly. You'll never make it. My circuits have had quite enough of the wilds for one day.
All right, we're back. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. Look, I'm super excited about what kind of this future has for us, kind of keeping us connected and some of these new virtual experiences. I definitely, Vicky, I'm going to be going to checking it out myself when it releases. So I'm pretty excited about it for sure. Look, we got some more head nodding on that. So I'm not sure if we have any time for questions. We did such a great job of kind of like having a pretty full session here today. But what I would do is thank the audience so much for participating with us today. And I think this was just an amazing panel. And I'm really excited about the future. I think we could all raise the roof a little bit on that. I think this is kind of a time for optimism. And I would say thank you to all of the great creatives and innovators out there, because I think it's taken all of us to kind of work ourselves through this time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
You so much.
Thank you, Eric. And it's great to see you. Thank you for moderating, and thank you for the team. That was a great conversation and really appreciate it. Wish we could go on forever about that. So thank you. Welcome back. We do have the results from the poll, so thank you for weighing in. The question that we asked a little bit earlier was, how long do you anticipate working from home? And the results, let's see, in those who thought June 2022 was the date, that was 16% of you. December 2021 was 14%. September 21 was 26%. And the overwhelming majority at 44% felt that we were going to be going back to work in May of 2021. So thank you for participating in the poll. Appreciate it very much. So next up, with brands including Discovery, Oprah Winfrey Network, the Animal Planet, Travel Channel, Golf TV, Food Network, Eurosport, and more than 100 more, Discovery Communications is the global leader in content creation and distribution. Today, we're very lucky to have two of the company's tech leads who will share the company's journey into the cloud. Remember, if you have questions for them, please put them into the chat window so we can get answers for you at the end of this discussion. Rob Goldheim is a 13-year veteran at Discovery, where he serves as Group Vice President of Production Engineering. Wayne Caffrey has been with the Discovery team for more than 15 years and currently serves as Senior Vice President of Post-Production. Thank you both for being here. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat window. So, Wayne and Rob, let's get started.
My name is Wayne Caffrey. I'm SVP of Post Production for Discovery, with teams currently in Maryland, New York, Miami, Knoxville, and London right now. And we cater to all the networks, corporate, and all the different EMEA regions and Asia Pacific, Asia Latin.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Rob Goldheim, Group Vice President of Production Engineering for Discovery. And we basically, production engineering is in charge of studio, live, as well as post-production, the engineering side of the house. And like Wayne, we have teams in different regions around the US and the globe.
Well, what we wanted to kind of do is go through our experiences with working remotely, obviously post-production being kind of the focus here, and Rob's team on the engineering side, and how we've managed through the situation with what we're doing, what's going on right now. What I was going to do is just give everyone a quick overview of just the volume of work that we do, just to kind of give you an idea of where we were kind of pre-COVID, where we are now, and then we'll talk about in general, like after we get through the different topics, where we see our departments and how we see our work being done in the next 6 to 12 months. So I'm just going to share with you a brief slide. So there's just 2 slides here, and cool. So just to give a quick overview, Discovery's post-production right now is 7 locations. As of March 2020, we had 7 locations. Obviously, you see it there: Maryland, Virginia, Knoxville, Tennessee. We had 2 in Chelsea. One was in the headquarters that we've now vacated, and the other was in Chelsea Market. We have post in Miami, and then Chiswick in London. Where by November, we will be down to 4 locations. That will be Maryland. We will have consolidated Novatech from Virginia into DCTC Maryland, which we've already done. Miami Post is in the midst of relocating to Knoxville, and we consolidated Post at 850 into Chelsea Market. And obviously we can talk about the challenges there and the future challenges we see with that. And we still have the London Post in Chiswick. On here, what's not on here is there's a Post team in Amsterdam, which Rob's team is supporting in terms of compliance work, but I'll let him speak to that when we get to our edit 2.0 and future edit stuff. Our clients that we cater to is obviously all of our US nets, all of corporate, and all the different regions, as I said before: UK, EMEA, Latin America, and the APAC regions. All the different services of what you'd imagine post-production would do would be everything from original programs or versions, repacks, reloads, which is taking programs and adding in social media content or additional content that didn't air the first time, compliance editing for the different regions, language and graphics reversions, which happen all over the globe. Marketing, promos, and short form. So a lot of you name the platform, we do promos and short form for it, and then obviously high-end color correction, effects editing, sound design, audio mixing, and then just the different platforms. Obviously, we deliver for all the platforms for the company, everything from broadcast to social media platforms. Just to go through the resources that we currently utilize, and Rob's team supports with us. We have about 171 edit systems. Obviously, UHD color grading rooms, audio suites. We have a staff of about 119, and then an extra pool of 140 freelancers. Our main resources are scheduled out of Silver Spring, Maryland, and London for all locations. Right now, we're averaging about 174 sessions per day, or shifts, if you want to think about it. Each session for us is about 8 hours a day. Is 8 hours, so about 174 per day. And we're on track to repeat kind of last year's numbers, which was 330,000 post hours, 49 to 50,000 programs, and 30,000 promos. So that is that's kind of where we are, where we are, kind of like the scope of things. So as we talk through what we had to manage with COVID and stuff like that, it'd be good if everyone keep in mind that the volumes that we're trying to manage there and how we work through those. So maybe we just start talking about pre-COVID and what our plan was. And Rob, if you want to talk about like what the end, what from your standpoint, what the plan for cloud edit was, or remote editing, before this all hit.
Yep. Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, that's a lot. And, you can see from what Wayne just presented that, that's a lot of sessions. And then there's, pre-COVID, there was the moving target of all of the real estate strategy for Discovery, closing offices, reopening new offices, rebuilds, and these sorts of things all have to be factored in. And it became very apparent to us very early on that we need to come up with a strategy where we could shift a lot of the work around based on where the people were, where the resources were, and the cloud, provided us an opportunity. There's some work done in advance to the production environment that helped us along the way, and we'll talk about that. But our content, getting an understanding of our content and our content supply chains, kind of led us to be able to start what Wayne was referring to as Edit 2.0. So in Discovery's world, Edit 2.0 is comprised of 3 pillars, essentially. There is straight up cloud-based editing, which is a sort of a lift and shift of our on-premise edit clients and storage, including all the plugins and fonts and all the goodies that go with it for the creative people. That all gets migrated up to a public cloud, and you edit just as if you were sitting in front of your machine. Another pillar of Edit 2.0, our next generation editing, is what we call proxy edit. And Wayne touched on this a little bit, and we've rolled that out already into the Amsterdam office for compliance editing. And what that is cloud-based proxy editing. In other words, through our content chain, we can deliver to the editors a work order that contains all of their media and information about what compliance edits they should be making and working on. They make their edits against a smaller res, or it's full resolution but smaller bitrate file, and check that edit. And then when they hit complete and they feel they've done their job, and there can be a review and approval if needed, it goes up to the cloud and then gets those edits, and that EDO gets rendered against the high resolution asset. And then it goes into some checks and then gets delivered if it passes. And then the third pillar on the next generation edit is live cloud editing. So in other words, and we're starting to test this in some accounts for our Food Network Kitchen live events, where we do 5 live events a day. We can stream the camera footage to the cloud and do some lightweight editing if there needs to be a fix, or for some highlights and delivery to social media and that sort of thing. And so these are all the things that we had put in place, or we were working toward putting in place all pre-COVID. And it sort of, I don't know that we can use the term fortuitous with COVID, but having some of that in hand and that direction allowed us to sort of not miss a beat when we weren't able to go back into the offices.
Now, one quick question for you regarding that. Did it change the priority once COVID became real? Did it change the priority of these solutions and how they were going to be deployed, or was it pretty much just accelerating the whole process?
It changed the priority and accelerated. It definitely, we immediately had phone calls asking when's it going to be available to us at scale. And so we got the priorities, and I mean, all 3 have to be rolled out because they're based on use cases. And so we have all of those use cases active, and people don't want to stop. Now more than ever, for the content, we want to deliver content as quickly as we can with the same quality they're used to. So there's a big ask for it.
Sure.
Would you agree with that, Wayne?
Yeah, definitely. And it leads right into us and our teams anticipating the impact of COVID. So one of the big challenges was kind of like looking at future. Things hadn't really hit yet. If you think about January, February, people were kind of watching the news. So it was hard to get a clear understanding of how much of an impact this thing was going to have. You know, it's just like Rob's team. My team is considered essential. So when things like this happen, when you get like hurricanes, or when you get big snowstorms and stuff like that, the majority of my team would still be required to make it into the office. And so we were still in that mindset as how can we plan to still get into the office if this, really hits and has a big impact. So obviously we started talking with Rob's team immediately. They were already researching remote solutions, or at least a stopgap solution for the rest of the year until we could get a true cloud editing platform in place. So but there was a gap. There was a gap in right as when equipment would be available purely through manufacturing delays, right, from where the equipment was coming from, and there was a gap between that and when we needed to get people out of the office. But I think one of the things that made us really successful was working to our own timeline. We didn't wait for a government mandate. We didn't local government mandates. We didn't wait for anybody, even higher up. We didn't wait for our bosses to say, hey, you should go remote. And all the time they were super, communicating all the time with us and stuff like that. We kind of started planning out ahead of it. And one of the things that we did was we were like, okay, we don't have a solid remote system. We'll have something in a few weeks, but how do we get people out of the office and create social distancing within the office, right? Because we had a lot of desktop editing going on, people very close to each other. So what we immediately did was we just kind of polled the team. A lot of our editors have really great rigs at home, a lot of equipment that they've collected over the years. And so we were able to basically, at least in the US, if we just go with US numbers, about 50 of our editors had their own gear at home, as well as audio guys had their own gear at home. So what we did was we kind of put together processes, manual processes, to get them media back and forth. And then my team, the ops team, just working around the clock to support them in terms of the workflows, the manual workflows. And then just getting those 50 people out of the office created the space for us to realign and reschedule everybody within an edit suite, and not in a touchdown. And then we also had multiple shifts going at the same time, so we needed to get people off the multiple shifts because people were very concerned about sharing rooms and all that kind of stuff. So I think that really helped, and that gave us the 2-3 week gap that we needed. So as once the equipment came in, then Rob's team worked really. They already had RGS kind of like researched, and we were able to just basically we're like a handout station. We just had editors pull up, sometimes just opening the trunk of their car, putting equipment in it. They drive off home. They go home. They set it up, and then that kind of just led into, just then figuring out the workflows remotely and connecting and all that kind of stuff. Rob, your perspective on just the timelines and getting the equipment, and it was definitely a challenge, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think everyone was in the same boat, whether you're in this industry or not. But the testing of HPRGS and some of the remote systems we had already done, because we sort of needed to, as Wayne pointed out in his slides. We have all these locations all over the place, and to have engineering support in all of those locations, that can be a real challenge for us. So we were trying to remote into those machines and make sure that we could test it by remoting back out. Wayne had some diverse locations for his producers from his editors, so we had built a what we called a remote producer system, where using some cheap off-the-shelf supplies and honestly Zoom, we were able to allow the producer to look in on the edit session, including the editor and his timeline screen or her timeline screen, and have a live look in sometimes, and we could switch it to be the play out, so they could do immediate review and approval if needed. We already had that in our back pocket, just out of necessity, and editors being in one location, producers being in another, or even sometimes at home. So we were lucky to have that hardware already in place. And then, as Wayne said, the HPRGS system we had tested for similar reasons and for just engineering necessity. We had to go back in and shore some of that up. And then the hardware we actually were pretty lucky in getting the edit hardware in place to us, because we had already started to investigate an order for scale for our proxy editing solution. And so we had just moved that order up, and which helped us get higher on the priority list for delivery, which helped. But luckily Wayne and his group were able to do a stopgap while we got that in. And we got it in quickly, but then we had to push images to, 100 machines.
Was connectivity an issue? Because we weren't really planning to be working from home. I mean, obviously you had some of the other solutions worked out, but how did the connectivity present challenges in this?
It had a number of challenges. We did some work. We worked closely with our InfoSec and our IT team, and our VPN, we kind of worked with them to shape some of the edit traffic and kind of isolate the edit traffic versus internet traffic to give sort of a better user experience for the editors. And we also asked the editors to do some things like plug directly into their router and not use Wi-Fi. and if they could shore up their Wi-Fi connectivity and that sort of thing. We had a couple baseline rules like, don't edit from Starbucks if you can. No offense, Starbucks, but in these kind of public spots that just are not too, that they vary too much in their bandwidth.
Sure. Yeah. And then all the time. So we're now basically by April, mid-April, we were 95% remote in all locations, which was a pretty no small task. So the next thing we were really focused on was productivity levels, like were they going to decrease, were they not? It was kind of unknown at the time, like with productions kind of closing up, with the pipeline shut down. But then again, I know Rob's team was working on getting camera kits out to talent and stuff like that. And in the meantime, our services were in more demand than they ever had been before because of the pandemic, people were at home watching Discovery, watching all our channels. So it became super important to make sure that all the content that we were making and supplying continued to make its way through that supply chain. But what really happened was, looking at the working from home situation, it's tough, and it's still tough. It's still hard to manage, at least from an operations standpoint. You lose a lot by not being in the office. You lose there's not only a technical connectivity, but there's an emotional connectivity that's lost to the work. And editors and audio mixers, a lot of them collaborate with producers, and so you kind of lose that. So we've done the best thing we can to try and maintain some sort of office environment, which is we hold regular office hours for people to drop by, because that's what we would do. That's what we would do if we were in the office. I would walk around whatever facility I was in at the time and just go visit people, stop in, talk to people, hallway conversations, and you lose all that. And so we're still trying to really get back to that. We won't 100% get back to it, but and then just to kind of talk about it's really difficult to actually edit an audio mix from home. So everybody's situation is different. Some people love it, some people, and they don't want to come back to the office, but some people it's really, really difficult. People with kids at home trying to, can you imagine trying to homeschool and then edit for 8 hours or mix for 8 hours? We've got people going through some serious stuff at home, and all the time, the interaction and the support they might get from being in the office, that's gone. So it's been super challenging working towards that. So, and then just from a standpoint going into the office, we've only been really going back in for heavy lifting stuff like color correction stuff, heavy graphics work, or for instance, like just with Shark Week, we had an editor, anything that's like very timely and needs a quick turnaround. We have to have somebody in the office just to make sure there's no delays with work from home systems and stuff like that. Yeah. Rob, anything to add on here?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great point. We all miss seeing each other and joking around with the engineers and the editors for sure, and the audio people, of course. There are some technical limits also with the kind of remoting in to your client in our facilities. Baseband outputs from the laptops we provided, to scopes and to broadcast monitors are non-existent or different from what they're used to in suite. And to Wayne's point, that's what, kind of affects some of the productivity and creates a little bit more fatigue for the editors, and we're very conscious of it. We'd love to get 10 gig to each client, to each editor's house, and we wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. But I don't know that that's in the cards. So we're working through some of those issues and trying to ease some of that. And like Wayne said, keeping the facility up and running so that if there's a need to come into the facility, and we have all the COVID rules in place for distancing and walking around and reporting, we can accommodate that as well.
That's great. I mean, it's a lot to think about, right? It was a lot to think about before COVID.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, what you've been able to pull together. And again, because you were planning something similar prior to this, it probably made things a bit easier. But with these challenges, it seems like I'm curious how much of the percentage of the workforce wants to stay working at home after it's okay to come to the office. Has that conversation been had yet?
For sure, yes, we are having that as it's going. You know, we were almost about to kind of reopen the London office, and obviously with recent turn of events there, we are no longer doing that. We're still going in on very limited basis for color correction and stuff like that. But we were actually gearing up for the team to go in on a rotational basis, people who wanted to get back into the office, who it would benefit. So obviously we put a halt on that start of next year for people to go in safely and work and collaborate again and get back to that what that norm was. But there will be people who just won't feel comfortable for quite a while going back into the office, and so we need to be sensitive to all that and kind of work through those situations. So, you know, it's here. Remote working in some fashion is here to stay, but it's up to us and as managers to kind of figure out what's that right balance, keeping people safe until people feel comfortable to get a vaccine, even, right? Because even if there is a vaccine, people may not feel comfortable taking it. So it's all these things just being prepped for it. But the great thing is we've had a really good working solution right now. Rob can kind of go through where we're looking at next, some pretty exciting stuff. You know, our overall productivity, surprisingly, across the board is only down 0.3% since before we went remote. Now, what we've noticed is that working remote, some things are actually more efficient, like doing cut the clock work, doing some of the international compliance work, doing things where it's just an editor working on their on their system. That stuff tends to be quicker to do from a remote standpoint. It's when you get into a collaborative environment, especially on the programming side, you know, when just going through Shark Week, we saw this really kind of like highlighted the difficulties, is that collaboration within on the programming side took a hit, but overall the compliance and cut the clock work leveled it out. So obviously going back into an office environment, we're going to be looking for that balance to maintain the efficiencies we found with the cut the clock compliance work and gain back the efficiencies on the programming side, but we have to do it in a safe way. Rob, I don't know if you want to kind of lead into the different solutions we're now looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to add to that just from the engineering side and the remote support of these systems. We had, before COVID hit, because of our diverse locations of all the clients and the editors, we had already gone to our engineers work from home 2 to 3 days a week and then go into the office in different locations the other two or 3 days, depending. So that means we had to have remote access. We had to make sure that each client was built the same exact way, so we knew what to expect if there was a problem. We had images for all of them and could first birthday them if need be, to get the editors back up and running as quickly as possible. So we were in pretty good shape. We had already worked out all the access questions, so we were in pretty good shape to do that 5 days a week. It's just, as Wayne said, kind of the camaraderie and the social aspect of it.
Well, it's very impressive. I mean, the volume of content that you generate on a normal day is remarkable. What you've been doing during COVID is astounding. It really is. Do you guys have any final thoughts as we wrap up here, or do you want to take a question?
Happy to take a question.
One of the questions just came up is, how are you planning for physical space given the footprint needed is dependent on where you settle for remote work versus premise work?
That's a good question. Yeah. I'll take a stab at it. And the truth is, it's hard to answer right now. We've been asking that same question of our management and real estate people. But at the end of the day, I think we will maintain the footprint that we have, because we'll have, as Wayne talked about earlier, we'll have some people going in and we'll have some people remote. But the people going in will want to provide more space for them, a little bit more. So it'll probably be the same footprint with just less humans occupying it, is how I see it. Wayne?
Yeah, for sure. It's like we were kind of just saying too. It's finding that right balance. Obviously, real estate is going to be not only a big thing for our company, but for every company. Luckily, we were already in the midst of a lot of moves when this happened, and thank God we were able to like continue those moves. Some of the moves were actually, it got obviously some people on the facility side still had to go into the office to make those moves happen, and people on Rob's team had to make those moves happen. But the footprint, like I said, we were 95% remote. So it's just about now, if we're going to get people back in, we still have edit rooms, which are going to become more important than ever, I think, right? And then because you can truly isolate somebody really well there. But it's just about maintaining the right foot traffic until we can really assess how long we need to keep the majority of the team remote. But I think in a year from now, I'm a believer that people will return to normal. I think people, I think there's a reason in the first place that we've had offices everywhere, right? The way businesses have offices. Sure. And I think there's true collaboration that teams can have by being in the office. But I do think that it's probably going to change the way we work for probably forever. But it's just about finding that right balance between what's the right work to be done remotely and what's the right work to be done in the office in a collaborative environment.
Sure. Well, we've got time for one last comment here. I'm just curious, we've talked about reducing the human footprint in the offices, but once you get back to a situation where people are going back to the office, what does your cloud strategy look like then? Are you going to maintain the hardware on-prem, or is most of that going to be moved to the cloud?
My expectation is it'll be hybrid for a while, but we'll start migrating to those three pillars, one or another, by use case as best we can. I wouldn't expect to see a big refresh of on-premise hardware as we move forward. There will be some, but as these pools of storage that we have all across the globe, edit storage, high-end edit storage, they're hard to maintain remotely, and it's expensive. And if we can start looking at SaaS models and use what or pay for what you use, and not your highest common denominator, we're hoping that there's a lot of cost savings in that, and also a lot more ease of support and efficiencies, right? If we can stop delivering one piece of media to 20 places, there's a lot of cost savings in that we have to figure out a way to calculate that. But I think the writing's on the wall that that's the place to go.
Sure. Well, I can't thank you both enough for your time today, and we're big fans of the Discovery family. Thanks for being supporters of the AIS as well. Thank you for your time. It's been enlightening, and I look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Yeah, pleasure.
So, Jim.
Sir.
How are you?
Well, you know what? I'm great, and I want to say hello, New York, hello, Philly, go Birds, Ecuador, Vancouver. This is live television, and part of the problems of making something like this live is you have some technical glitches from time to time. But I love the electricity and the immediacy when we're able to bring everybody together in real time. And for these people to clear their schedules and make it possible. But boy, it's great to listen to, and it's great to hear them thinking out loud for all of us. The thing that comes back to me, someone said earlier on one of those great discussions, geography doesn't matter anymore. And I'm struck by all the people who are connecting with us live and in the chat, and they're from everywhere. And it feels like, whether you're at Discovery or some of these other companies, it feels like where you are physically located. Well, let me ask you, do you think the studio buildings on a lot of these lots are going to be refilled with people in 3 years, and we will kind of be back to what we did at one time. It's easy at a time like this to say, oh, this will change everything forever. What do you think?
That's an interesting question. The more I think about it, the more we tend to be looking at different ways to structure that studio environment. I mean, we need sound stages, obviously. We need places for production crews. But to your point, the executives and others, it's hard to say. I mean, one of the things I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes when we talk about collaboration is this notion of how do you feel like you're collaborating on a creative project? Because it's a little bit different, and there's a lot of spontaneity that needs to be accommodated, and that can be a little bit difficult if it's really a technological way of doing it.
Well, if you just look at what we're doing here, we all gathered together last night. We had our input, made changes to the program. It's pretty difficult to think in terms of not getting together and working out important issues. But I'm struck by how easily we've all adapted to kind of working from home. I thought it would be much more dramatic than it's been. And frankly, it seems like we've all acclimated, right?
We have. And we're getting used to people's interior decorating choices.
That's it. We can see what books they're reading, right? So a couple of notes that are kind of positive. Elvis, Baz Luhrmann's new musical with Tom Hanks playing the role of Colonel Tom Parker, with Austin Butler playing Elvis, started. They're back on set in Australia yesterday. They started yesterday. Grey's Anatomy is back in production. The Witcher, Supernatural, Sky TV in London, their Discovery of Witches is in production now. The Good Doctor for ABC, Jurassic World, which had halted in February, they're back in London in production. Michael Bay's new movie Songbird for Paramount, they're back in production. Aaron Sorkin's untitled new biopic about Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz with Cate Blanchett playing Lucy. They are back in production. So it feels like some of the big shows are really able to, to moving ahead.
I think that's fantastic. And luckily they're all taking baby steps back to this effort too. So they're going to try to figure out how can we do this safely and not have any missteps along the way. So I commend them for jumping back into production.
I saw that Open Road is going to open Honest Thief, the new Liam Neeson thriller, October 16th. And they want to open at least 2,000 theaters, 70% hopefully of North America. So a few movies coming back, which is kind of encouraging. Tenet is at 36 million in the US, 215 million international, for a total of about $250 million. When you compare that to Inception, which, was 10 years ago, but Inception did 290 million North America versus 36 million for this film, and a total box office of 836 million by comparison to 251 for this movie so far. So we're not there yet. But hopefully things will get better every week, right?
They will. And people need entertainment, especially now more than ever.
Yeah. Great. Well, our next presentation is about collaboration, just what we're talking about, and the creative process that you guys at Google are making possible. Buzz is the global lead for media and entertainment at Google Cloud when he's not chairing the AIS. So Buzz, what say you? Let's turn it over to you.
Let's do that. Welcome back. I'm here to talk about collaboration for content production in the cloud. Please feel free to put any questions or comments you have into the chat on your screen, as I'll be answering those questions in a few minutes. Back in the old Hollywood studio system 60 years ago, films were made at studios and people from every department came to work each day to work together. Writers, directors, actors, cinematographers, editors, and tradespeople gathered at the studio lot to make the films that we know and love. At the end of the day, all of the assets created for the film were contained within the studio environment. All of the primary functions of the production were also contained within the studio environment. That model has changed over the years to an independent model where production companies have their own offices. Studios eliminated the idea of having studio production employees on staff and instead have hired independent professionals to do almost all of the production work on a picture-by-picture basis. Film and television production is driven by creative personalities. Their mission every day is to solve problems, lots and lots of problems. This creative problem solving is the essence of the craft of storytelling. Technology may come and go, but the need to collaborate in production is truly fundamental. At Google, we think about collaboration a lot. One of our primary initiatives in content creation is to figure out methods for connecting people so that they can collaborate in new ways. The Movie Lab's 2030 white paper, released last year, in a way is a chance to revisit the old studio system. The industry is interested in the migration of the entire infrastructure of content production and post-production in the cloud. In order to do that, however, we need to think beyond just transporting processes verbatim into the cloud. Now is the time to reinvent these processes and to revisit the relationship between the creative and the technology. It's an important opportunity to improve the way we produce creative content. At Google, we're actively developing solutions toward this goal of bringing the ecosystem of creative production and post-production to the cloud with a wide variety of solutions and technologies. But it's not just about the technology. It's about the people and how they collaborate. At Google, I work with a global workforce every day, as I'm sure many of you do as well. People we work with are in far-flung locations all around the world. In the visual effects and animation business, it's not uncommon to have teams in different time zones chasing the sun to meet deadlines. This presents some challenges when you need to stay in touch at both ends of the time zone map. Workflow has its challenges with inefficiencies in the process of sending large media files to and from facilities around the planet. How much time is spent staring at progress bars? It makes a lot of sense to move to a modern version of the old studio system where the people and the applications come to the data. There's a single source of truth for all the media assets created during production and post-production. People should have access to the assets they need when they need them so that they can focus on iterating the creative process. That's where cloud comes into the process. This is one of my favorite quotes from author Douglas Adams. We're stuck with technology when what we really want is just stuff that works. Our company mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. This applies to everything we do. Information is the key to successful collaboration. But if people can't find the information, then that's a problem. Our methods of communication convey lots of useful information. However, we need to think about how to organize that information to make it available to those who need it. We have lots of remote working tools available, some of which work better than others for creative collaboration. One of the bigger challenges is in the communication methods we use. There's no right way to communicate, but it's important to think about the methods that best serve the creative process. From phone calls to video meetings to emails and chats, there are many siloed places to look for information, notes, and records of what was discussed. There are pros and cons to every method, so it's important to think about which tools best serve your collaboration needs. For example, with voicemail, one of the positive things about that is it's a direct method of communication and it's concise. One of the downsides is that it's difficult to transcribe and it's even more difficult to share it with other people. Phone calls are very immediate, which is great, but nobody seems to answer the phone anymore. So that's not a great solution. Email, it's immediate, it's concise, or it can be, but sometimes it's a little too concise. Chats, they're very immediate, and it's a great way of communicating when you have something in the moment, but they tend to be ephemeral. So whatever information you put in the chat might disappear. Video conferencing, one of the greatest things about video conferencing is that you have a sense of presence with the people you're working with, which is great. But one of the downsides is there's a significant lack of eye contact, and that level of connection is really important when you're collaborating. These tools don't fundamentally change how people collaborate. I'd go so far as to say that in some cases, they can make true collaboration more difficult. Misinterpreted text messages, unclear shorthand expressions or crazy acronyms, garbled video signals, it's not exactly ideal or even what we're used to, but sometimes we have to use what we have in order to keep moving. With video conferencing, well, we all rely heavily on video conferencing these days, and it's important to get the most out of your video meetings. Nearly every conferencing system allows participants to join via phone and computer, and when joining via video, remember that lighting is important. Eye contact is a very important part of face-to-face meetings, but it's difficult to achieve in video conferencing. Creative collaboration really requires the human connection. So make sure that if you're using a webcam, everyone can see your face. It sounds simple, but notice how many times you've been in video calls where someone is either silhouetted against a window or is looking up or down or sideways at their computer screen while you're talking to them. We've all gotten used to our coworkers' guest rooms, kids' rooms, kitchens, and dens as their background, and often the lighting is less than ideal. So at least try and position yourself so the lighting is on your face, not the background. If you're so inclined, there's some simple lighting kits available now for webcam use, and they really do make a difference. Sound is important for collaboration too. Every voice matters in ideation, so it's important to use good quality microphones or a headset with a microphone, and use background noise filters if they're available in your video conferencing application. Your mute button should be part of your muscle memory by now, but to be honest, I only use it when there are more than 5 or 6 people in the meeting, because an open mic tends to foster collaboration in ideation sessions, and the flow isn't broken by looking for the unmute button, which frankly is something we all struggle with. Now, the recording of meetings is worth considering. Most all video conferencing applications and systems allow the recording of meetings. It's important to note that if you plan to record a meeting, you need to let the participants know that that's the plan and get their permission to do so. In my experience, this is great for large group meetings where policies, training, and demos are involved, as it's a great way to revisit the material or to extend the meeting to those who couldn't make it. However, when it comes to creative meetings, brainstorming, or ideation sessions, be sensitive to the fact that people won't talk as freely when they know that the meeting is being recorded. It's best to find other ways to track what happens in the creative meetings. In my case, I like to share an agenda document in Google Docs with the group prior to the meeting. Then I invite the participants to the meeting to add their notes to the document during the meeting, which tends to get the collaborative juices flowing. Sharing screens to illustrate points, using virtual whiteboards to ideate visually is a great way to engage and is very similar to what people are used to when they meet in person. For creative meetings via video conferencing, remember that you're collaborating in a visual environment, so take advantage of that as much as you can. Shared documents. As I mentioned, I have found that using a shared document during a meeting is a really useful way to collaborate, and it gives a foundation upon which other ideas can be added after the meeting ends. It can be used as a repository for thoughts and action items and links and doodles. There are too many places to look for meeting notes, from emails to chats to voicemails, so a shared document gives the team a single source for revisiting thoughts and ideas from collaboration sessions. Make sure that people have easy access to these documents, as well as to the related content and team directories and distribution lists and other relevant documentation discussed in the sessions. One of the most effective ways to enhance collaboration is not to focus on the technology, but is to focus on the human dynamic of collaborative work. Remember that during production, there are thousands of decisions to be made, and most of them involve consensus or collaboration. At the moment, we can't just tap someone on the shoulder to discuss the lens choice, the framing, the actor's wardrobe. The impromptu act of spontaneous collaboration is very valuable and is particularly vulnerable at this time where teams are unable to be in one place at one time. Our human-to-human interactions may be diminished for now, but there are ways to improve on what we have. Focus on creating better opportunities for face-to-face interactions. We can leverage VR and AR technologies into the creative process. Game Engine Previz offers interactive collaboration capabilities. Virtual scouting via tools like Google Maps SDK for Unity gives you the tools to create and customize a geographically accurate world based on real-world locations. Use immersive tech like 360 VR cameras on set and give access to those crew members who require it without having to be there physically. Platforms like Meetmo, which we're using here today, allow access to all types of camera feeds to allow remote access to on-set environments. Remote work is our new normal. We should take advantage of this opportunity to improve upon the process of how we create content. That brings us to a call to action. Think about how to improve collaboration by considering the human interaction element. Look at the tools you're using today and ask yourself how they can be improved. Explore new ways to enhance that experience and talk with the software vendors about your ideas. It's important to take this opportunity to reflect on why and how we create content. I'll leave you with this quote from Charles Darwin to reflect on. It's the long history of humankind, and animal kind too, that those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. So it looks like we have a few questions in the chat here. So I thought I would jump in and answer some of those.
Let's go.
One of the first questions we have here is, are you going to get into VR collaboration? Altspace, Facebook rooms, etc. Yes, I mean, there's a lot of experimentation going on, just trying to figure out, and this has been happening pre-COVID as well, trying to figure out ways to better engage teams when they're trying to meet. There's some really interesting sort of next generation video conferencing systems out there that are doing some pretty remarkable things. And some of them are VR, AR based, and some are more traditional camera based. So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in that space, and it's probably being accelerated. I can't say for sure, but it's definitely something that is of interest. I mean, the challenge with meetings in a lot of cases is wearing headsets. It tends to be not for everybody. So the question is, how is that going to work? And so that's why I think there may be, more of an approach to AR, VR, some sort of mixed reality that's going to make that make sense. But stuff out there.
It's interesting, Buzz. We just we've got a fantastic international group of committees in our Japan committee, which is Sony and all of the major electronics companies. They typically do their award show in November at Interb, which is kind of the NAB show for Japan. And they reached out and said that they are going to do it in VR because the convention's been canceled. And so they are going to do the award show in virtual reality, and wanted to know, since I can't be there, could I put on a headset and be there virtually? So keep your eye on Japan. And they've got an Olympics they're trying to get executed. Where do you think there's been all these rumors that Apple going to have a major, technology announcement in the next 18 to 24 months about AR, VR. Where do you think VR is right now? And do you think it's getting a second look or a third look because of what's going on?
I do. I think all of these technologies are getting a second look and a deeper dive too. I think sometimes some of these new technologies are treated as a little bit superficial. Sometimes they say that the only way to adopt a real technology is to start it as a toy and generate the interest from a toy standpoint and then work your way into the professional world. I think with VR, it's been around long enough where people know what it does. Now they're finding the application for why they would need it and why they'd want to use it. And I think that's a powerful thing.
I saw yesterday that New York City has just announced that New Year's Eve in Times Square has been canceled. It'll be virtual. So it feels like we're going to have more and more of these mega events where there's just no way for us physically to get together. But if you want to do something on New Year's Eve and you want to be in a place virtually, it seems like technology is going to be one of the solutions that hopefully can bring people into contact with others in a safe way.
Yeah, I agree. And as long as we're designing these solutions around the people and their needs to connect, I think that's going to be the important element of the things that rise to the top. So hopefully that's what the focus is. I know that's our focus is.
Per your presentation, what is the single thing that you're hearing about that people feel they miss when they cannot collaborate in person?
Spontaneity is the thing that comes up probably the most. People just want to, as I mentioned, they want to sort of tug in your shirt sleeve and say, hey, I've been thinking about this thing. What do you think? As you're getting coffee together or walking down the hall together, those kinds of walk-by engagements, if you will. I think that's the thing that people are missing the most, because everything is sort of a scheduled event and you're all kind of planted. I've heard people joking they have saddle sores now from all the video meetings.
Yeah.
I think it's a different paradigm, and people want to sort of be out of their element because that's when the creative juices start going. But then you run into someone in the hallway or at the water cooler, and you end up walking back to your desk with a whole different set of thoughts in your head. And I think that's the thing that's missing right now, is that sort of open communication, that continuous collaboration that we're sort of, it's just below the level.
Yeah. Yeah. We should do a shout out to the people and the team over at the TV Academy for the Emmy Sunday night. And I know people are continually looking at these award show results and disappointed that the audience is at an all-time low. And, I think it's tough for the team. I used to work there. I know what that's like, to wake up on Monday morning and find out all your work maybe didn't get all the pats on the back that you'd hoped. But they had more than 100 remote cameras all over the world, so that when they read out the 23 awards categories, they were able to go to the nominees and the winners live. And I just think that is an amazing achievement. And if necessity or crisis is the mother of invention, and I think we heard that today, so many innovative ideas are coming out of this period of time that the world's going to be a better place. But kudos to the Academy and ABC for what was a heroic effort on Sunday for the Primetime Emmys. Many of our crew here that work on this program work the red carpet show, the pre-show. So guys, great work. It was an amazing effort.
Thank you. So thank you to our team here. And also, I just want to thank all of you for joining us today. I know it's a big commitment of your time, and we have more things coming. So you stay tuned for the next couple of weeks. We've got some more really interesting discussions to be had. I do want to thank our sponsors, Gary Radburn and Matt Allard at Dell, Rick Champagne from NVIDIA, Michael Mansouri and his team from Meetmo, especially Christian Poe and Johan Romero. Also, kudos to Damian Petro and his Brave New Media team, and our friends at the PGA, VES, and ASC. Jim, any final thoughts?
Next week, we're going to have sessions on workflows from our friends at SohoNet in London. Gary Radburn's going to talk about what technology you need to have in this period in order to win. And then we're really excited because Mars Perseverance, the mission to Mars, is halfway to the planet of Mars. It'll land there in February with cameras and microphones for the first time. And their VR team is going to take us on a journey to Mars, talk about what it's going to be like once they land, what you're going to be able to do in VR, and what they're doing for the first group of astronauts that are going to make the eventual journey to their unmanned missions. So we've got great programs coming up every Thursday at 11. So please come back here and join us.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jim. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you.